The crack of a rifle shattered the dawn's fragile calm, echoing across the endless plains like a beast's growl. She staggered backward, eyes wide, as a figure cloaked in dust and resolve emerged from the shadows. The Apache warrior, her husband, moving with the swift certainty of a man born to these harsh lands. "They're coming," he said, voice low and heavy, his gaze cutting through the morning haze. The time to hide was gone. The fragile peace they had forged was crumbling beneath the weight of whispered threats and hardening eyes. The vast expanse of the frontier stretched out around their small homestead, a solitary farmhouse standing defiantly against a backdrop of rolling sagebrush hills and sun-bleached rock formations. The wind carried the scent of dry earth and pine, mingled with the distant murmur of a restless river. It was a land both beautiful and brutal, where survival demanded more than just strength. It demanded trust in the unseen, a resilience born of scars, both visible and hidden. Here, at the edge of civilization, the fragile bond between a pale-skinned settler woman and her Apache husband drew wary gazes and grudging whispers from those who could not fathom such a union. Emily had come to these lands long before she met him, a woman hardened by loss and loneliness, her beauty a bright flame against the dust and grit of the settler town. Her marriage to Mato, a proud Apache warrior whose eyes held the wildness of the desert and the fierce tenderness reserved only for her, had started as a curiosity, a connection sparked by admiration for her striking presence. But what unfolded beneath the surface was a love deeper than any tale whispered by campfires, rooted not in fleeting desire, but in a bond fierce enough to challenge the borders drawn by blood and prejudice. Yet with each passing day, the chasm between their world and the wary outsiders seemed to grow, shadows stirring where acceptance should have bloomed. Now that tenuous peace was threatened. The settlers' murmurs had grown louder, fueled by fear and distrust, while lurking dangers from old conflicts whispered at the edges of their lives. Emily's heart pounded with a mixture of apprehension and determination. To protect Mato, to defend the love that transcended the shallow judgments of her community, she would have to confront the doubts seated within her own soul. Could the man she had married, not just for his gaze, but for the depth it concealed, truly withstand the coming storm? As the sun climbed higher, Mato's silhouette moved toward the tree line, every step measured and fierce. A sudden snap of dry branches behind them shattered the stillness, drawing their eyes to a group of riders approaching silently, their faces painted with war markings. Horses pawing impatiently against the dusty earth. They were not visitors, nor allies. They bore the weight of a past neither Emily nor Mato could ignore, a reckoning long overdue. The wind carried with it the scent of gunpowder and betrayal. And as the horsemen closed in, the fragile threads of trust and love that held their world together began to unravel. Emily's gaze met Mato's, a silent promise, an unspoken vow to stand firm against the tide of fear and hatred. Whatever lay ahead, this union, born of beauty but tempered by fierce devotion, would not break without a fight. Many companions who journey through these forgotten lands have told us that fate, or the treacherous algorithm of YouTube, sometimes undoes their subscriptions without warning. Before the next perilous trail reveals itself and a new twist unfolds, take a quick look down below the video and make sure you're still signed up with our band so you don't lose the thread of the story. We don't want you to miss any of the voices echoing from this valley. Check your subscription now and join our saga. The horsemen emerged from the brush like ghosts summoned by the dawn, their painted faces hard as stone, and eyes sharper than the cold steel glinting at their hips. Emily's breath caught, the weight of their approach pressing down on her chest. She watched Matto's jaw clench, the tension in his muscles a language all its own. Ready to battle a war fought on terrain where neither mercy nor hesitation had ever found a foothold. The distant bark of a dog echoed once, then fell silent. A morning wind carried no mercy. It swept the plains like a warning, stirring loose dust and rattling dry branches. The world narrowed to the space between their battered farmhouse and the encroaching shadow of those riders. A crucible where past grudges and present fears collided. Stay close. Matto's voice was barely a whisper, yet it carried the weight of command and desperate hope. His gaze locked with hers, a silent pact forged in a second, binding them tighter than blood. Emily's fingers trembled as they found his, their grip fierce, anchoring her whirling thoughts. The first horseman broke from the group, his steely eyes flicking over the homestead before settling on the couple. Behind him, the others fanned out like the petals of a dying flower, swift, silent, ominous. There was no greeting, no parley. The wind carried the bitter scent of gunpowder and old wounds reopened. Emily took a slow, steadying breath, the taste of dust and ash mingling with the cold determination rising in her veins. These men belonged to a faction that refused to accept Matto's presence here, a shadow from a world she barely understood but had come to trust, had come to love. That trust now trembled on the edge of oblivion. Matto stepped forward, every movement calculated, powerful. "We don't want war," he said, his voice a low rumble, layered with a calm that belied the storm. "But we will defend what is ours." The leader's gaze didn't waver. "That Apache blood stains your place," he spat. "No settler will stand for it." Emily's heart clenched at the venom in his words, the poison of fear twisted into hate. She swallowed the burning in her throat. Fear was a luxury she could not afford. Her eyes sought Matto's again, to the man who held not just her hand, but her very soul. Suddenly, a shout rang out from behind the riders, a young settler boy, wild-eyed, sprinting toward the farmhouse. His face was pale, sweat and dirt mingling in a mask of panic. "They're coming from the south," he gasped. "More riders, and they've got rifles and firebrands." Matto's eyes narrowed, his stance shifting like a coiled serpent, ready to strike. "We have no time," he said, voice thick with urgency. "Emily, inside, lock the doors. I'll meet them." She hesitated for a heartbeat, a world of uncertainty etched in the lines of her face. "I'm not leaving you," she said, voice steady despite the storm inside. "You will," he insisted, tilting her chin so their eyes met. "This land has no mercy for the weak. You must survive, for both our sakes." Reluctantly, Emily nodded, her hands tightening once more on his. Her pulse thundered with every beat. The raw fear of possibility, the fierce will to endure. She slipped inside, the wooden door latching with a hollow finality. Shadows lengthened in the rooms she once thought safe as the distant hoofbeats grew louder, nearer. Inside, she moved with wary determination, peering out the grimy window at the approaching line of horsemen. The sun climbed higher, but the world felt darker, swallowed by the threat that bore down upon them. Each rider was a promise of violence, each horse a herald of devastation. Maddo appeared at the edge of the clearing, his silhouette framed by the streaks of morning light. His eyes searched the horizon, scanning for signs beyond the obvious, spies, trackers, enemies who thought themselves unseen. He bore the scars of countless battles, not just on his skin, but in his deep-set gaze. And now those scars pulled tight like a bowstring, ready to snap. Suddenly, a harsh whistle split the air, the signal. From the tree line, a second group of men galloped forward, this one bearing the marked insignia of a militia known for ruthless raids on Apache settlements. Fearless, cruel, they came with one goal: to extinguish what they saw as an unforgivable defiance. Matto's breath hitched, his mind racing through memories fast as the charging horses. The ambushes, the broken treaties, the dead left to rot in unmarked graves. But today was different. Today he had something worth fighting for. A love that survived beyond the definition of tribe or color. The first shots rang out, thunder tearing through the fragile quiet, splintering trees and sending birds screaming into the sky. Emily pressed herself to the floor, hands clutched over her ears as the violence soaked into the earth like poison. Outside, amidst the chaos of cracking wood and desperate yells, Matto fought not just for survival, but for the future they dared to dream. One where their worlds might one day intertwine without hatred's shadow. But as the smoke curled and the echoes of gunfire faded into an eerie silence, Matto caught a glimpse of a figure slipping through the dust, someone he had vowed never to see again. A traitor. His heart shattered in that instant. The man raised a burning torch, eyes gleaming with cruel satisfaction. "This ends today," he hissed. And in that blaze of betrayal, Emily realized their fight was far from over. The rifle cracked again, not from an enemy's hand, but from the homestead's shadows. And this time, the bullet carried a message that would change everything. The rifle cracked again, not from an enemy's hand, but from the homestead's shadows. And this time, the bullet carried a message that would change everything. Emily's breath caught, a sharp stab of pain shooting through her chest as she crouched behind the weathered doorframe. The echo of the shot hung in the air, mingling with the harsh sound of gunfire, now roaring like wildfire across the open plains. Fear and fury warred inside her, each thudding heartbeat, a drum summoning courage, she didn't know she still possessed. Outside, Mato moved. With a lethal grace, his body coiled like a striking serpent as he met the onslaught. Every muscle tightened, every movement a blend of instinct and honed skill born from years of brutal hardship. The once quiet homestead was now a battlefield, dust swirling in spirals around hoofbeats and the crack of rifles. Yet, beneath the chaos and smoke, the unyielding steel in Mato's eyes told of a man defending more than territory. He fought for home, for love, for the fragile peace that teetered on the edge of ruin. The militia riders came with a furious intensity, desperate to stamp out ferocity that drove them back, if only momentarily. Emily pressed her face against the grimy window, the jagged glass biting into her cheek, and watched the savage dance of survival. Her hands trembled, clutching a worn patchwork quilt, one she had sewn by the dying light of countless evenings, now a symbol of the fragile shelter they possessed. A sudden crash shattered the side wall of the farmhouse, splinters flying as a firebrand slammed against the dry timbers. Sparks erupted like angry fireflies, threatening to consume the home that was their sanctuary. Emily's heart tightened in a frozen grip of helplessness as smoke began to curl beneath the low ceiling beams. "Emily!" Mato's voice boomed from the chaos, cutting through the haze. "Get to the cellar, now!" She hesitated, eyes wide with terror, but the burning timbers and the roiling smoke pushed reason aside. She stumbled toward the trapdoor hidden beneath the faded rugs, the heavy wood groaning as she pried it open. The cool, musty darkness swallowed her as she descended, the muffled sounds of battle above fading but never truly silencing. Down below, the cramped stone cellar held a breath of old earth and forgotten whispers. Emily huddled against the cold wall, her thoughts racing faster than the pounding of distant hooves. The love that had drawn her here, the fierce bond with Mato, was under siege, and the brutal world outside promised no mercy. Suddenly, a soft whisper grazed her ear, barely audible. "Emily." She turned sharply, heart hammering. From the shadows emerged a shape, slender and ghost-like. Cloaked not in dust but in memory. Mato? No. Something else. Someone she had hoped never to see again. Joseph. The voice barely rose above a breath, yet carried the weight of betrayal. He stepped into the pale light creeping down from the crack above, eyes gleaming with cruel satisfaction. The man who had once been Mato's trusted comrade, now a shadow of treason. "You've brought hell to this place," Emily said, voice trembling with anger and disbelief. Joseph smiled, a slow, bitter curve. "This ends today. Your peace, your love, they're poison to those who cling to old grudges." Mato's ragged shout cut through the cellar ceiling like a blade. "Joseph," he bellowed, footsteps thundering. "Why have you come?" Joseph's gaze flicked toward the glowing embers feeding the flames outside. To finish what was started. To purge the defiance. A sudden rumble shook the earth beneath them. The floorboards creaked ominously, warning of the house's failing bones. Fire crawled greedily along the beams overhead, smoke now suffocating and thick. Emily's breath turned ragged, her mind splitting between fear and fierce resolve. She knew the man before her harbored no mercy, and worse, his treachery threatened to unweave the fragile tapestry of their lives. Jason. She whispered, using the name only she dared call him. "Don't make this worse." But his eyes were vacant of reason, fixed only on annihilation. Above, the desperate clash reached a fevered pitch. Rifles spewed lead, horses reared, and the shouts bore down like storms. Mato's voice, steady, defiant, rose through the din. "Hold the line. Protect what's ours." The cellar trembled again, dust falling like shattered hope. Emily braced herself against the cold wall, each breath a fought battle against the choking smoke. Then a terrible sound ripped through the chaos, the firebrand igniting the thatched roof. Flames clawed toward the sky, swallowing soft beams and memories in a vicious embrace. Joseph's laugh, sharp and merciless, cut through the fiery roar. "You cannot hide from history, Emily. Blood remembers." A sudden crash overhead. The ceiling gave way, and jagged shards of wood rained down near her, splintering the darkness. Emily scrambled, heart pounding like a war drum of its own. She clutched a small, worn leather pouch close to her chest, a keepsake of a promise made beneath stars now swallowed in smoke. Above, Mato's form sprang from the shadows, eyes blazing with unwavering fire. He surged toward the cellar, fighting for every second. "Emily, hold on!" His cry sliced through the tempest. The earth trembled once more, and in that heartbeat, the cellar door burst open, flames licking at the edges. A sudden rush of acrid air filled the cramped space. Emily's gaze locked with Mato's, fear and fierce love coalescing in an unbreakable bond. "Together," he breathed, extending a hand. Just as she grasped it, the cellar door slammed shut behind them, with a deafening finality. A sinister silence fell, broken only by the crackling fire above and the heavy breaths of two souls bound by love and survival. In the shadows beyond the firelight, Joseph smiled once more, a serpent poised to strike. The night was no longer silent, but the true war had only just begun. The rifle cracked once more, not from outside, but from the shadows of the homestead itself. Emily's heart seized, a cold jolt racing through her veins as she crouched behind the battered doorframe. Above the roar of gunfire, tension solidified into something heavier, a weight pressing against her ribs like an unseen fist. Every thud of her heartbeat echoed louder than the bullets slicing through the air. Outside, Mato moved with the fierce elegance of a predator defending his domain. His eyes, dark and unyielding, scanned the chaos as his body twisted and struck with deadly precision. The clash between the militia riders and his desperate defense churned the field into a storm of dust, broken wood, and cries of pain. This was no mere battle for land. It was a reckoning writ large, an assault against everything they had fought and dreamed for. Emily's gaze darted toward the side, where a firebrand had just smashed into the farmhouse wall, sending ragged sparks swirling like malevolent spirits. The dry timbers groaned their surrender as flames began to lick greedily at the fragile shelter. Her chest tightened. This home, carved from toil and love, was now bleeding fire. She clenched the quilt she held, its threadbare fabric suddenly a tether to a hope that felt perilously thin. "Emily," Mato's voice sliced through the tempest, raw and commanding. "To the cellar, now!" Paralyzed only for a breath, She obeyed, lungs tightening under the weight of smoke that already crept beneath doors and windows. Trapdoor lay beneath faded rugs, hidden in plain sight. With trembling hands, she pried it open and descended into cold darkness, the world above reduced to muffled chaos. The cellar embraced her, with its musty chill and silent shadows. Alone, she hugged her knees, the rough stone biting into her skin. The distant crackle of fire and the staccato whispers of gunfire coiled around her like a serpent waiting to strike. Her thoughts twisted. Would Mato survive this hell? Would their love, forged against a backdrop of suspicion and hatred, endure the coming storm? A sudden breath stirred beside her, soft and unnatural in the stale air. Emily spun, heart hammering, to find a figure emerging from the gloom. Not Mato, not who she hoped to see. It was Joseph, ghost of a past wound, the man who had once shared Mato's brotherhood and now wore the mask of betrayal. Joseph, she breathed, voice a fragile thread of disbelief and fury. His eyes gleamed with a bitter light. This ends tonight, Emily. Your dreams, your peace, they poison the world that clings to its old grudges. Before she could respond, the cellar shuddered as flames crept closer overhead. The house moaned under the assault, its old bones breaking apart. I warned you, Joseph hissed. There is no place for betrayal here. Emily's hands trembled, tightening around the small leather pouch she hid within her coat. A token of promise and defiance, a symbol of the life she and Mato pledged to protect. She swallowed terror and forced herself to steady her voice. Joseph, it's not too late. You don't have to do this. But his eyes were void of mercy, fixed beyond her on destruction itself. From above, the desperate crescendo of battle roared ever closer. The sharp trumpet of rifles broke through splintering wood and angry shouts. Mato's voice cut through the din, relentless and commanding. Hold, protect this ground, our home. Sudden horror seized Emily as a section of the ceiling cracked, hurling down wooden shards and choking smoke. She stumbled back toward the far wall, lungs burning as acrid air clawed at her throat. Joseph laughed, a cold, merciless sound that echoed like a curse. Blood remembers all, Emily, and it never forgets betrayal. Outside, horses howled in panic, and men screamed in fury. Flames engulfed the roof, hungry tendrils, stretching toward the sky in a maddened dance of ruin. Emily's gaze flashed upward to the faint glow above, then back to Joseph, the man who held their fate in his hands. In that cold cellar, the past and future collided, and hope trembled on a jagged edge. Suddenly, the cellar door blasted open, sending a rush of searing air and choking smoke. Through the swirling haze, Mato's silhouette appeared, a dark figure, blazing with fierce resolve. His eyes locked onto hers, unspoken words passing in that suspended moment. Survival, love, fight. He stretched out a hand, calloused and steady. Emily, take my hand. With a trembling breath, she grasped it, their fingers intertwining in a grip of unbroken defiance. The flames roared around them, devouring wood and memories alike. As the smoke thickened and the fiery hunger edged closer, the door slammed shut behind them, sealing them inside the suffocating dark. Outside the cellar, Joseph's smile twisted into a serpent's leer. His mission was far from over. This night would mark the beginning of a war, not just for land or life, but for the very soul of their fragile, forbidden union. And as the flames cracked and hissed against the dying wood, a new threat stirred deeper in the shadows, one that threatened to shatter the only bond powerful enough to defy the coming darkness. In the heavy silence that followed, a faint but unmistakable whisper slipped through the smoke, carrying a chilling promise. They think this fire will burn them all away, but some embers never die. Rifle cracked again, not from an enemy's hand, but from the homestead's shadows. And this time, the bullet carried a message that would change everything. Emily's breath caught, a sharp stab of pain shooting through her chest as she crouched behind the battered doorframe. Her fingers dug into the peeling wood, knuckles white with the force of clinging to something real amid the chaos. The acrid taste of fear mixed with soot and dust in her mouth, but beneath it, a fierce ember of determination warmed her veins. She could not, would not, let this night consume them. Outside, Mato moved like a shadow draped in fire and fury. His limbs twisted and struck with precision, born from a lifetime etched in the wildness of these unforgiving lands. Each clash of rifle and roar of galloping hooves was a drumbeat in the war waged not just for survival, but for the fragile dream they had dared to knit from the tattered threads of their worlds. His dark eyes blazed with unyielding steel, the only steadiness in a maelstrom of hatred and fear. Emily's gaze flickered to the side where flaming embers danced cruel circles around the shattered wall. The dry wood groaned its surrender, whispers of smoke curling into the dim morning light. Her heart clenched. Their home, their sanctuary born of sweat and love, was bleeding fire. Clutching her quilt, worn and threadbare, but still theirs, she felt the weight of all they stood to lose. "Emily!" Mato's voice, rough but urgent, tore through the din. "To the cellar, now!" Frozen for a moment, breath paralyzed by the thunder of her pounding pulse, she obeyed. Each step toward the hidden trapdoor was measured and trembling. The familiar faded rug masked the wooden hatch, and with trembling hands she pried it open, descending into the cold embrace of darkness. The cellar swallowed her whole. The stale, damp air settled around her like forgotten memories. She curled into the rough stone wall, fingers digging into the cold as the muffled cries and crackle of fire whispered through the floorboards. Blood pounded in her ears, each beat that of a war drum calling her to fight, to endure. Then a slow breath drew close, a shadow detaching from the gloom. "Emily!" Her body jerked around, breath stuttering. There, a ghost of a past no light had. Yet banished, Joseph, the man whose betrayal was hotter than these licking flames. His eyes gleamed with venomous satisfaction. "This ends tonight," he murmured. "Your peace, your love, they breed defiance that infects the land. They must be purged." Emily's chest tightened. "Joseph, please, it's not too late. Don't let this hate win." But his gaze was hollow and resolute, locked beyond her, into the flames consuming everything they cherished. "The river of blood we swim in remembers no mercy. The cellar trembled beneath them, groaning as the house surrendered to fire's hungry claws. Smoke swirled thick, stinging her eyes and clawing her throat, each breath a battle. Outside, the battle seethed. Rifles cracked like thunder. War cries tore the morning open. Matto's voice, a beacon through the storm, boomed. "Hold! Protect what is ours." Splinters rained down as the ceiling above cracked and gave way. Emily stumbled, muscles screamed, lungs burned. The sharp scent of smoke invaded deeper, choking the fragile moment. Joseph's laugh, cold as a rattlesnake's hiss, slashed through the carnage. "Blood remembers betrayal, Emily, and tonight it will be remembered in fire and ash." Emily's gaze flashed upward to the faint glow of burning beams, then back to the man who carried their doom. Her trembling hands clutched a worn leather pouch, a talisman of promise and rebellion, pressed close to her heart. The cellar door exploded open, a blast of searing air and swirling smoke. Through the haze emerged Matto's figure, dark, fierce, unyielding. His eyes found hers, and in that suspended heartbeat spoke. Survival, love, war. He reached through the smoke, hand extended, steady and sure. "Emily, take my hand." She breathed deeply, grasped his outstretched fingers, their grip forging an unbreakable chain of defiance. The flames roared, greedy tongues scarring wood and memories alike. The air thickened with heat and despair. Then, the cellar door slammed shut behind them, sealing them in choking darkness. A sinister silence fell, alive with the crackle of fire and the harsh rasp of breath. Beyond the barrier, Joseph's cruel smile twisted like a serpent's coil. His night had only begun. And deeper, within the shadows, where no light dared reach, a new figure watched. Silent, unseen, its eyes glinting with cold intent. The fire outside hissed, but in the dark, a whisper slipped through the smoke. "They think this blaze will consume us all, but some embers burn forever." The powder burned sharply again, but this time the shot came from within, a betrayal cloaked in shadows that twisted Emily's breath into a ragged gasp. She crouched behind the battered doorframe, knuckles digging into weathered wood, heartbeat hammering like a war drum beneath her ribs. Outside, the world bled chaos. Inside, fear and fury tangled into a fierce resolve. Matto moved like a dark storm come to life, each strike controlled, every movement a blend of savage grace and relentless will. The militia's war cries shredded the morning air, while his steady hands carved paths through the turmoil, defending more than land. He fought for their fragile sanctuary, for the love that stitched them together beyond the cruel boundaries of tribe and blood. Emily's eyes flicked to the side where sparks blossomed cruelly from splintered timbers. The dry wood, long parched by sun and wind, moaned its surrender as crimson tongues began devouring their home. Clutching the quilting she once sewed by fading candlelight, now soaked in smoke and ash, her resolve hardened. This house was more than shelter. It was the cradle of their defiance. "Emily!" Matto's harsh voice cut through the roar, a lifeline in the storm. To the cellar! Now! Paralyzed, but for a moment, she forced motion. Each trembling step led her to the hidden trapdoor beneath the threadbare rug, a passage into cold, musty shadows. As she descended, the world above became a muffled tempest of shattered wood and broken dreams. The cellar embraced her, with chilling silence and forgotten dust. Pressing against rough stone, she let the weight of the battle wash over her, senses filled with the bitter tang of smoke creeping through cracks, the distant crackle of flame consuming memory. A breath drew near, soft and deliberate among the silence. Her pulse leapt. She spun to face a figure emerging from the gloom. No Matto, but a ghost from a past she hoped was buried forever. Joseph, the betrayal incarnate, his smile a venomous curve in the dim light. "This ends tonight," he whispered, venom thick in each syllable. "Your love, your peace, they poison this land." Emily's gaze narrowed, fire trembling beneath her fear. "Joseph, it doesn't have to be this way. Don't let hate blind you." His eyes gleamed hollow. "I see only the defiance that must be burned away." The cellar trembled, a cruel warning, as the old bones of the house groaned under the devouring flames creeping above. Smoke thickened, stinging eyes and clawing at lungs. The very air seemed to suffocate hope. The battle outside roared to fevered heights. Rifles cracked like thunder. Desperate cries tore through the smoky veil. Matto's voice rose, unyielding, commanding. "Hold, protect this land, this life." Sudden shivers rocked the cellar as the ceiling cracked. Splinters rained like bitter tears. Emily stumbled backward, choking on the acrid taste that burned through the thickening haze. A cruel laugh shattered the chaos, Joseph's cold and merciless echo of finality. "Blood remembers betrayal, Emily. Tonight it will be marked in fire and ash." Her fingers clenched. The worn leather pouch at her chest, a talisman woven with promise and defiance, a fragile flame against the consuming dark. Tears burned unshed as the cellar door blasted open, scorching air rushing in like a living beast. Through the choking smoke, Matto's silhouette emerged, dark, fierce, filled with unyielding flame. Their eyes locked in a fierce covenant, an unspoken vow forged in the crucible of this nightmare. "Emily, take my hand," he commanded, voice steady despite the surrounding ruin. She grasped it with trembling certainty, fingers threading together with fierce intent. The flames roared their hungry song, twisting and curling like serpents around the shattered bones of their home. The air grew thick and heavy, the world narrowing to the two of them, sealed in darkness. The cellar door slammed shut with finality, cutting off the raging inferno from their battered sanctuary. Outside, Joseph's smile twisted, sinister and venomous, a serpent poised to strike at the heart of everything they had fought to build. A heavy silence folded over the suffocating stillness, punctuated only by the crackling fire and the ragged breaths of two souls tethered by love and survival. And as the glowing embers cast long, wavering shadows, a chilling whisper slipped through the smoke. They believe fire will consume the past, but embers hide deepest where shadows gather. From beneath the trembling floor, a faint pulse thumped. Something old, something waiting in the dark. The fire was only the beginning. The firebrand hissed against the timbers, hunger flaring as sparks leapt like furious fireflies into the choking smoke. Emily pressed herself against the cold stone of the cellar wall, the rough surface grounding her trembling form. Each breath was a struggle, thick with ash and fear. Yet beneath it all, a stubborn pulse of defiance beat strong. Above her, the homestead groaned and wheezed beneath the assault, wooden beams surrendering inch by inch to the bright, relentless flames. The battle raging beyond the cellar walls had morphed into a brutal symphony. The crack of rifles, the pounding hooves, desperate shouts pierced the acrid haze. Mattow's voice thundered down through the floorboards, fierce and unyielding. "Hold your ground! Protect what's ours!" His command was a lifeline, a thread tying her to the chaos above, where every moment was a gambit between life and death. Emily's fingers clenched, the worn leather pouch against her chest, a small talisman woven from promises whispered beneath unyielding stars. The weight of it was a flame in her palm, a symbol of everything sacred they fought to preserve. The sudden blast of the cellar door snapping open jolted her heart free from its cage. A wave of searing heat and choking smoke flooded in, swallowing the cool darkness like a beast awakening. Through the haze, Mattow emerged, shadow and fire melded into a single shape of lethal purpose. His dark eyes locked onto hers, steadfast, blazing with the fierce love that had kindled amidst suspicion and scorn. "Emily," he called, voice cutting through the swirling smoke. "Take my hand. We fight through this, together." Her trembling fingers reached out, intertwining with his in a grip fierce enough to bend steel. In that instant, the world contracted to the narrow space between their clasped hands and the roaring inferno inching ever closer. Then, the cellar trembled violently. A low groan beneath their feet spoke of inevitable collapse. Above, the ceiling splintered. Shards of wood rained like bitter tears, stalking the air to claim their prey. Emily stumbled back, fear and determination merging into a single sharp edge. The smoke clawed at her throat, each breath a jagged shard of fire. She held on to Mattow's hand like a lifeline to a dream teetering on destruction. Suddenly, a cruel, low laugh slithered through the shadows, a sound drenched in venom and finality. Joseph, the traitor's face, emerged within the smoky gloom, eyes gleaming with malicious satisfaction. "You think this fire will cleanse? This house, this union? They poison the land," he hissed. Emily's glare was a spark against the dark. "It's you who poisons everything. Your fight is with us, not the land." Joseph's smile twisted into a serpent's sneer. "There's no place here for a peace you breed. Blood remembers, and it thirsts for reckoning." Mattow's shout crowned the tumult outside, a war cry that carved through the inferno. "Stand firm. Protect our home. Protect our lives." The walls shuddered. Dust and smoke coiled like vipers, biting and blinding. Emily's gaze flitted from the sinister figure of Joseph to the sweltering ceiling, where flames crawled like angry serpents, inching closer with ravenous hunger. The cellar door slammed shut with a thunderous finality. sealing their fate within this fiery tomb. Their hearts pounded, a syncopated drum of fear and fierce love. In the choking dark, the fragile sanctuary of stone became a crucible, molding two souls locked by defiance and desire. Outside, Joseph's cruel laughter wove through the smoke, a poisonous lullaby promising ruin. But in the depths of that darkness, where shadows tangled with firelight, a whisper emerged, a voice older than hatred, softer than despair. They believe this blaze will consume us all, but embers hide deepest where shadows gather. Then, beneath the roar and crack, a faint but steady pulse stirred, a heartbeat not born of flesh, but of a secret older than the land itself. Emily's breath caught as the floor trembled once again, not from the fire's rage, but from something else, something awakening, something watching. Tense and silent, she pressed her ear to the cold floor, feeling the tremor ripple like a forbidden promise. Mato's whispered breath escaped into the embers. Whatever comes, we face it all, together. And in the suffocating silence, the new war begun, one that would test every thread of their bond, every ounce of their courage, and the fragile hope flickering in the darkest heart of the frontier. The cellar door slammed shut with a finality that echoed like a death knell in Emily's chest. Darkness swallowed the fragile sanctuary, smoke curling faint and suffocating through the cracked stone walls. Her fingers still gripped Mato's calloused hand, their clasp a lifeline amid the choking haze. Outside, the roar of fire and conflict crashed relentlessly. But here, beneath the weight of the burning world, their breath tangled in a shared determination. Mato's gaze locked with hers, his eyes fierce with promise, yet haunted by shadowed memories no fire could cleanse. "We hold here," he said, voice low but unyielding, "no matter what comes." Emily nodded, the taste of soot sharp on her tongue, heart pounding like the relentless drum of distant hooves. The warmth of the flames above belied the cold terror nesting deep within her. Every crack and snap from the weakening beams summoned a surge of dread. This refuge could fracture at any moment, sending them back into the inferno outside. Her eyes traced the worn leather pouch pressed against her chest, its weight both heavier and lighter than fear. It held secrets, promises whispered beneath stars, now swallowed by smoke, reminders of a bond steeled by fire, prejudice, and loss. But beyond the flames awaited more than hate. Now betrayal crawled close, gnawing at the edges of their fragile peace. A sudden muffled thud reverberated beneath their feet. Mato stiffened, muscles taut like coiled wire. Emily's breath caught, every sense straining for threats beyond the visible fire. The ground beneath shuddered once, then again, an ominous pulse beneath stone and timber. "Not the fire," Mato whispered, voice sharp as a blade. "Something else." A shadow shifted in the gloom, beyond flickering embers. A cold silhouette emerging from the smoke-thick air. Joseph, his presence like a poison impossible to dispel, stepped into the circle of faint light, eyes flashing with cruel satisfaction. The man who had betrayed their trust, now grinned as if savoring their unraveling. Emily's hands clenched the edge of a broken stone slab, nails biting into fractured surface. "Why, Joseph?" she demanded, voice trembling but fierce. "Why bring this hell to our doorstep?" His smile twisted into a serpent's leer. "Because some wounds run too deep for forgiveness. Because your peace, it's a threat to those who keep the old grudges burning bright." His gaze flicked to Mato, muscles flexing in readiness. "And I'm here to snuff it out." Mato's jaw clenched, every line of his body tensed in silent battle. "You're nothing but a ghost of hatred, Joseph. But this ends now." Before the words left his mouth, the cellar trembled violently, the walls groaning as the relentless fire clawed closer. Overhead, splinters rained down like shrapnel. The floor below quaked with increasing force, dust cascading from cracked mortar. Emily pressed herself against the cold stone, lungs gasping for air thick with smoke and ash. The world tightened to this suffocating space, a fragile island amid the chaos above. Despite the fear, her resolve blazed. They would not be swallowed quietly. From the shadows, Joseph's eyes gleamed with merciless intent. "You think hiding in darkness saves you? The fire only reveals truths long buried." The door above creaked and bowed, tendrils of flame licking its edges, casting sinister, dancing shadows. They were running out of time. The betrayals, the battles, the burning. Everything was converging into a single shattering moment. Suddenly, a piercing crack split the air. Not a gunshot, but the dreadful snap of collapsing wood. The ceiling above buckled, and a cascade of debris thundered down into the cellar. Emily stumbled back, choking on dust and smoke. Mato lunged, pulling her from the falling ruin, their bodies tangled in desperate breath and grit. "Hold on," he commanded, voice raw as the world burned around them. Between gasps, Emily caught the desperate beat of footsteps descending nearby. Not from their attackers, but footsteps, heavy and purposeful. Someone else. An unsteady light flickered through the smoke, revealing a stranger's ragged silhouette. Masked, cloaked in travel-worn leather, eyes flashing with urgency and fear. The figure froze, gaze darting between the collapsing ceiling and the imprisoned pair. "Who?" Emily's voice cracked in the haze. The stranger raised a hand, trembling but resolute. "I'm here to help. There's more coming, something worse." Mato's eyes narrowed fiercely. "Speak quickly. This inferno won't wait." The visitor coughed, voice rough yet urgent. "A band of mercenaries, not just militia. They've crossed the river. Far more brutal. They hunt blood debts, and you're squarely in their path." Emily's heart sank, the flickering hope doused by a flood of new terror. "We barely hold now, and you say worse is coming?" The stranger nodded grimly, stepping closer despite the choking air. "This fire is just the beginning. They want to torch every remnant of what you've built. And there's a traitor in the shadows, feeding them your every move." Pain seared through Mato's eyes. "Joseph." The visitor nodded, voice harsh. "Come with me. There's a way out, through the old. Mining tunnels beneath the ridge. But we move fast. No guarantee anyone survives the night." Emily clenched Mato's hand tighter, their bond forged anew in the crucible of despair and fierce hope. The soft glow of dawn was drowning behind plumes of smoke, swallowed by the rising storm. The fire above roared like a beast starved and unleashed. The cellar walls trembled again, their fragile prison fracturing like a dying heart. Mato's voice was iron. "Emily, if we live, we do it on our own terms. If this land rejects us, then we take what belongs to no one but the brave." A cold gust swept through the cellar, carrying embers and whispers alike, the scent of betrayal and impending bloodshed. The stranger reached for Emily's arm, pulling her gently upward. No time! Together they scrambled through the collapsing debris, the roar of the inferno chasing them like vengeful spirits. As they neared the trapdoor leading toward the hidden tunnels, a sickening crack shattered the moment. The floor beneath them groaned and shifted, fracturing like dry bone. Emily's foot caught and she tumbled, slammed hard into the stone wall, with a sharp cry tearing from her throat. Mato spun, tearing toward her. But the ground beneath the cellar quaked one last time before giving way. Darkness yawned wide as the floor split open, devouring them in a void of choking dust and unseen peril. A final breath echoed in the black, and then silence. From the edge of collapse, Joseph's voice sliced through the void. "You cannot escape your past, nor the war that follows." In the depths below, trapped between rock and fire, a faint pulse stirred, faint but unyielding. And in the cold dark, a whisper touched the stone. Some embers burn beneath even the fiercest flames, and their fire will rise anew. The cellar air was thick with smoke and despair. Yet, in the suffocating darkness, Emily's grip on Mato's hand remained unyielding. They clung to each other as the floor beneath them shifted again, the earth groaning with the weight of the burning homestead collapsing overhead. Flames licked hungrily against the wooden beams above, but their sanctuary, though battered, had not yet surrendered. Mato's voice, low and steady, cut through the haze. "We can't stay here. The tunnels beneath the ridge, they might be our salvation." His eyes searched hers, fierce and unwavering. But Joseph's betrayal cuts deeper than the fire itself. "We must be swift, or this inferno will be our tomb." Emily's breath came ragged. The leather pouch pressed against her chest, against all odds, still held. The final token of a promise made in gentler times. A symbol of their love forged amid prejudice and hardship. She nodded, steeling herself, finding strength in the bond that neither fire nor hate could scorch. Together, they rose, the cellar trembling beneath their feet. Each step toward the trapdoor, to the tunnels, was a gamble with death, yet filled with a fragile hope. The moment their fingers brushed the cold iron handle, a deafening crash echoed behind them. The floor gave way, swallowing a section of the cellar into darkness. Mato's quick grip pulled Emily back just in time, preventing her fall. They exchanged a grim glance. No time for fear now. "We move, now!" Mato urged, leading the way as they squeezed through the narrow passage. The mining tunnels were cold and narrow, carved long ago from the stubborn earth beneath the ridge. The stale air carried faint echoes of forgotten labor, but now it sheltered two fugitives fleeing destruction and betrayal. The distant roar of the fire was muffled beneath layers of rock, replaced by the soft drip of water and the steady beat of their footsteps. Emily's mind raced through the ordeal, the hatred that had chased them, the militia's rifles harrowing the dawn, Joseph's treachery seething like acid beneath the skin. She pictured Mato's fierce defense outside. The way his eyes burned with unwavering resolve. Their love had survived so much, and yet the greatest battle was still unfolding. A soft light gleamed ahead. As they emerged into a hollow chamber, a small group awaited. A few trusted allies from the settlement who had doubted but now stood unwavering. Eyes wide with relief and sorrow, they formed a fragile shield around the couple. Old Samuel, the settler elder who had first doubted Mato's place, stepped forward. "We heard the fire, the fight," he said gruffly, his voice laced with regret. "You nearly burned with your home. But this union you hold, I reckon it's stronger than any hate. We'll stand with you now." Emily's eyes filled with tears, a quiet strength rising like dawn breaking over the desolate plains. "Thank you," she whispered, clutching Mato's arm. "It's not just about surviving this night. It's about forging a future where fear no longer governs." Days had passed since the battle, and as the smoke finally cleared from the horizon, the devastated homestead was a blackened memory. Yet from the ashes grew something resilient. Hope, fueled by the courage of two souls who refused to bow before a world set against them. Joseph, captured during the fracas and held under watchful eyes, was left to confront the consequences of his betrayal. His bitter words and actions had only united those he sought to divide, casting him ultimately into lonely exile, far from the lands he tried to destroy. Mato and Emily, now surrounded by a tentative but growing community of settlers and Apache alike, began stitching a new life together. Walls were raised, stronger than before, not just from timber and stone, but from trust earned through hardship. One evening, under a sky awash with stars, Mato took Emily's hand and led her to the ridge overlooking their battered but reborn land. The wind carried the scent of sage and pine, and distant rivers whispered promises of endurance. "Mato," Emily said softly, "we've faced fire and betrayal and fear. But here we stand, together." His gaze held hers, wild, tender, and fierce. "We carry the embers of all we've lost and loved. No blaze can consume what burns like that in our souls." They shared a quiet smile, an unspoken vow passing between them, a pledge that their love, born at the edge of separate worlds, would persist. The frontier was vast and often cruel, but in its harshness, it had given them the greatest gift, a fierce, unbreakable bond. As night deepened, the stars pulsed like distant campfires, lighting a path toward healing and peace. Around them, the whispered voices of the past mingled with those of a future still unwritten, a promise that some embers, though hidden in shadows, burn forever bright. The war for survival had ended, but the saga of their love and resilience would echo in the valley long after the fire's last spark faded. Emily laid her head on Mato's shoulder, her heart finally still, at peace. Together, they faced the dawn, a new day born not of destruction, but of enduring hope.